Okay, so this is a video to show how to solve a quadratic equation by completing the square. Now, the whole premise is based on the idea that this problem right here is an easy one. See, I have x squared plus 12x plus 36 equals 0. And essentially, by factoring it, if we use our patterns, we can actually shorten this up to saying x plus 6 squared is equal to 0. Because if I multiplied out x plus 6 times x plus 6, I'd get this whole ugly mess. Now, the reason we want to get that is something squared, so now I can take the square root of both sides of the equation, and now the left side just says x plus 6, and the right side, now it would be positive and negative 0, because the square root of 0 is 0, but there's no such thing as positive or negative 0, so it just works out to be 0. So to finish solving this equation, all I have to do is subtract 6 from both sides, and we get x equals negative 6 plus or minus 0, but we don't actually include that, so x is just negative 6. Now, this is the easy problem, which we can solve by simply taking the square root. The problem on the right, it doesn't work that way because what we have here with the 4 and the 12, there's nothing that's going to multiply to 4 and add to 12. So what we want to do is we want to make this problem here, this new one, look like the easy one before it. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to move the 4 to the other side. So we're going to have 12, or we're going to have x squared plus 12x, and then I'm going to subtract 4 and make that equal to negative 4. So I just subtract 4 from both sides, put it on the other side. And in order to make this problem like the previous problem, what I need to be here is a 36, just like in the last problem. So I'm going to literally add 36 here, but if I do that, I have to add it to both sides, plus 36. This is the completing the square, because the left side is now, again, x plus 6 squared. This is the same as the problem before. On the right side, though, we have a little bit uglier of a mess. We have negative 4 plus 36 is 32. And we still follow the same steps here at the end. We're going to take the square root of both sides. And if we do that, on the left side, we're just going to have x plus 6. On the right side, now we introduce a square root, so you got to remember to include the plus or minus, square root of 32. Now we're going to subtract the 6 from both sides, and we're going to simplify square root of 32. As far as the order, you can do those in either order. I'm going to go with simplifying this. The square root of 32 is going to be 4 square root of 2. So we're going to have a plus or minus 4 square root of 2 here on the end. On the left, I still have x plus 6. And then the only thing left to do is subtract 6 from both sides. So we'll end up with x equals negative 6 plus or minus 4 square root of 2. And that's our final answer. Okay, so a couple of examples of easy problems to practice with. This one here, again, we're going to do the same thing. There's nothing that multiplies to 25 and adds to 20. So we're going to subtract the 25 and put it on the other side. So we have x squared plus 20x equals negative 25. Now I want to find the number that I'm going to add to both sides. To do that, we're simply going to take this 20. We're going to cut it in half. Half of 20 is 10. And then square that number. 10 squared is 100. So that 100 is what I want to add to both sides. Now, that is the weird part of this problem, so I'm going to repeat that again. You take the middle number, what we call the b term, cut it in half, that's 10, and square it, that gives me 100. That's the number I add to both sides. So now the left-hand side, this is x plus 10 squared. And that 10 is still, again, the half of that middle b term. On the right-hand side, I got negative 25 plus 100. That's going to be 75. And then we finish the problem the way we finished the other problems. We're simply going to take the square root of both sides. And on the left-hand side, we're going to have x plus 10. On the right-hand side, we're going to have plus or minus square root of 75. Simplify square root of 75. That's going to be 5 root 3 with a plus or minus in front. We still have x plus 10 on the left. So we simply subtract 10 from both sides, and we'll have x equals negative 10 plus or minus 5 root 3. For the problem on the right, same idea here. We're simply going to move the 20 to the other side and cut the 4 in half. So if I do that, we're going to have x squared minus 4x. Now by subtracting 20, it's now equal to negative 20 on the right. Now to figure out the number we want to add to both sides, we take the middle term, negative 4, cut it in half. That's minus 2. That's going to be the number that ends up in the parentheses. But we square it. So negative 4 to negative 2, and then square it, we'll get positive 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. By doing that, this left side, this is x minus 2 squared. On the right, negative 20 plus 4 is negative 16. And now we finish the problem the same way we've done all the other ones. We're going to take the square root of both sides. Here we got a square root of a negative. That means we're going to have an I in our answer. But the left-hand side is just x minus 2. On the right-hand side, the square root of 16 is 4. So square root of negative 16 is plus or minus 4i. And all we have left to do is add 2 to both sides. So we'll get x equals 2 plus or minus 4i. Just leave the answer like that. The last problem, our example of the hard one. The reason this one's hard is we still have a number in front of the x squared. That means we got to take an extra step because we don't want a number here. So first thing we're going to do in this problem is divide the entire problem, the entire equation, both sides, we're going to divide by 2. So if I do that, now I'm going to have x squared. Now this middle term, this doesn't work out nicely. We're going to have 15 over 2x plus 9 equals 0. So the fact that that middle term is now a fraction is going to make it a little bit uglier to do our work here, but we still take the exact same steps. We're going to move the 9 to the other side, so we have x squared plus 15 over 2x is equal to negative 9. And now this middle step here, we're going to take the 15 over 2. There's a little scratch work over here. I want to take half of that. By taking half of it, and basically we can double the denominator, we make it 15 over 4. And then if I square 15 over 4, 15 over 4 times 15 over 4 will give us 225 over 16. Okay, so next, that's the number we're going to add to both sides. We're going to add 225 over 16 to the left and 225 over 16 to the right. All right, so now the whole reason we did this is the left-hand side, and here's the key number we're going to end up using. It's going to be x plus this number, x plus 15 over 4x, no, 15 over 4, no x, 15 over 4 squared. And on the right-hand side, I got negative 9 plus 225 over 16. And I'm going to do a little bit of arithmetic here. If I add these up, 9 sixteenths to get a common denominator, 9 sixteenths is 144 sixteenths, and it's negative 144 plus 225 is 81. So this whole right side is going to become 81 over 16, which is going to be nice because we can take the square root of both the 81 and the 16 here. So now, if we take the square root of both sides, we're going to have x over 2. Sorry, my kid just yelled something out here. Give me 1 second to get myself back on track. This is going to become x plus 15 over 4 is equal to positive or negative. Now the square root here is just going to be square root of 81 is 9, square root of 16 is 4, so it's going to be 9 over 4. And then the last step to solving this thing, we're going to add or subtract 15 over 4 from both sides. X equals negative 15 over 4 plus or minus 9 over 4. Now because there's no square root, there's no imaginary number here, we can simply simplify this and turn these into numbers. Negative 15 over 4 plus 9 over 4 and negative 15 over 4 minus 9 over 4. That's going to give us negative 6 and negative 3/2 for the two results.